I had my children on the floor. I was on my favourite blanket that my grandmother gave me on the floor like a cat.
And I realised in that moment the potential of what our bodies can really do as women.
Like I could feel his head, I could do my own internal, like, yeah, his head, I could feel it.
I was in tears, I was just in tears and overwhelmed with gratitude.
Hi and welcome to the Natural Birth Podcast, the podcast that is bringing embodied birth wisdom from women from all over the world sharing their natural birth stories. Don't forget to subscribe and download so that you can always have access to these empowering and positive natural birth stories. Hi, my name is Anna and I am the Natural Birth Podcast host. I'm a former midwife who left the system and I'm now the proud founder of Sacred Birth International, a woman-owned company with a mission to revolutionize the birth world and bring focus to the sacred and the natural intelligence of the birth process. We do this by providing world-class education, courses, programs, and coaching to equip women with the knowledge and the tools to have conscious pregnancies, empowering and positive birth experiences, and the most nourishing start possible for themselves and their babies postpartum. We also educate and mentor aspiring birth workers into sacred space holders and physiological birth advocates in the Sacred Birth Worker Mentorship, the Beyond a Doula training. If you'd like to work with me or take any of our courses, programs, or the mentorship, then head on over to sacredbirthinternational.com to find out more. Jessica, and welcome to the Natural Birth Podcast. How are you?
Oh, good. How are you? I'm so excited to be on here. I've seen so many, and so this is exciting.
Yes, I am also so excited to have you on. Not only are you, one of my Sacred Birth Worker mentees, now graduate, you're also currently my business course for birth workers, so I get to hang out with you there as well. But what I haven't heard is your fourth birth story, and I am itching to hear it. Because you have been on such a journey and you have so much birthing wisdom, having gone through really like your first being a hospital birth, then having a home birth with a midwife, then having a home birth with just a doula, and now your fourth, everyone hold on to your seats, unassisted.
I did it.
You did it. An unassisted breech birth. And you didn't even know you had a breech on board. And I'm so excited to hear all about it. So anyways, without no further ado, I just want you to tell us everything. Start from the beginning.
It's so fun to get to talk about it because I feel like in my circle here, it's just not like everyone's so fear-based and things. So I haven't really gotten to share my birth story too many times because I just feel like it's not held by people the way I want it to be held. So I just don't share it very often. But yeah, it actually the fourth one was I was getting this feeling before birth, like when I was getting close to it, like a month before, 2 weeks before, and I just felt like something was like, I was so scared about this one. Something was different about this one. And I talked to Anna about it in one of our chats, and I was just like, oh, I just feel so off with this one. I'm so scared. I've never been so scared before. And Anna was like, oh, maybe, you should have somebody there with you if you're feeling like that. And I was like, oh, it's not a worry of not having someone around. It's just this feeling of something's different this time. And so it was 3 days after my due date, and going to bed. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning, and my water breaks, and it's just a gush of like they do in the movies. It wasn't a trickle. It was that like pour all over the floor, and my water had never broken before labor had really started. So I was like, oh my gosh, like this is different already. It's just so funny because when it goes off that different path that you've had so many times, it's just like all of a sudden you want someone there to like ask questions, you know, like, oh, is this okay? Even though I know it's okay, you just having that reassurance that it is okay. And so contractions hadn't started yet, and I knew I was going to be a while still. So I was like, I would love to just go to bed and get some sleep. But I couldn't, because every single time I laid down, I would get another gush of water. And I tried and tried to lay down, but I just kept soaking through everything. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to go bounce on a ball or like rock. And I just like walked around. I cleaned the kitchen. I just kind of like kept myself busy, and contractions started. And they were growing stronger and stronger. But then it was like 5 a.m. So now 4 hours have passed, and they aren't going past 5 minutes apart. And and that was strange because usually I progress like pretty quickly. And yeah, they just would not get closer than 5 minutes. And they grew in strength though, like they were lasting like a minute long. But yeah, couldn't get any closer than 5 minutes. And then I felt, after an hour more of just being 5 minutes apart, I felt them start to like teeter off a bit. And I thought, okay, I'm going to lay down and have a nap now. And I laid down on the couch for maybe like 20 minutes on my side, and I had my leg propped up, and I didn't have any contractions for like 20 minutes. And then all of a sudden I could feel the baby just like drop down like further. And then it was like, oh my gosh, it's on. Like, that's it. It's dropped. It's right there. And that's when so that must have been at like 7 a.m. And I immediately wanted to get into the bathtub right away. Like, and that wasn't a plan to have a water birth, but I immediately was just like, go start the bath. I need to like just be in water right now. And I told my husband to go like wake the kids up, because I thought it was going to be quick, because all my other births, when I've had that feeling, they just come like right out. So I was like, go wake the kids up. Like, this is it. And then once I was in the bath, I had the shower on my back, and just like, that's when it really starts to like take over you. All the other ones, like I could really like breathe and sway through it, but these ones were like the ones that just like make you want to freeze up, you know, and make you want to be tense. They were just like absolutely overwhelming me. And I had read a book, was it Yolanda Norris Clark, is her book, Portal? And in it, she was just like, take each, like, I thought it was so helpful for this, but it was just like, take each contraction, each wave with gratitude. And instead of like dreading it when they start to come and being like, oh no, here comes another one, it's like, oh, here comes another one. Like, yes, thank you, here it comes. And when it's coming, just like saying, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And like, I love you, I love you, I love you. So I just kept saying that. Every wave that came was just like, thank you, I love you, thank you, I love you. And then I felt up inside, because I was curious, like, where is this baby? It felt like it had been so long. And I could feel him there, but it felt very like squishy. And I was like, that doesn't feel like a head, and that doesn't feel like hair. But I like didn't panic. I was like, well, maybe there's like some amniotic, like maybe some of the sac is like still bulging or something like that. So just kept on going. And then and then some meconium had come out when I asked for like a damp cloth. And when I put the cloth there, I looked at it and there was meconium all over it. And then my husband looks and he's like, that doesn't look like a head. And I was like, and that's when it clicked. And I was like, yep, that's his bum. He's coming out backwards. And my husband was kind of like, oh my gosh, like, what do we do? And I was like, that's it. It's too late. Just keep going. And it was definitely like a moment of like, oh no. But then honestly, thanks to watching your podcast and following all these people on Instagram and everything, like I knew it was okay. And so he came out legs or bum first, and then his legs flopped down, and then he was just kind of hanging there by his head. And my body could not push him out. It was like he was just stuck with his head there. And he did have the cord wrapped around his neck as well. And I just had to wait for the next contraction though. Like I tried so hard to like give that like one more push just to like force it out, but I couldn't. So just had to hang out and wait for that last
And
one.
were you on all fours? What kind of position were you in?
Yeah, on all fours.
Yeah.
That seemed to be the easiest one for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
And I mean, you did instinctively the right thing. I understand that you were surprised, but really, you do wait for the next contraction. And it sounded like, the whole body came out perfectly. So it was just that last, you know, bit of the head. And it's so important to just let let that
yeah.
baby also help birth itself, and your contractions will obviously help. Yeah.
But it was definitely like a moment because it's so weird seeing them hanging there like that, and you just think like is he okay? Like he's just dangling by his head. So, and you want to, my husband was like, do I like touch him? Do I help him at all? And I was like, no, 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 don't touch him. Like hands off, just from like watching all the videos and learning everything in the course. I was just like, don't touch him. And yeah. And then he came out and he was very blue. And it was very scary moment. But again, just from knowledge from everybody, I knew that some babies come out blue and like you just, put them on your chest and just rub them. And like some babies take a minute to
Yeah.
come into their bodies. And I honestly think that if I hadn't done so much, and not just with this pregnancy, with all my pregnancies, just filling myself with positive birth stories and watching videos and being in your course and everything like that, I would have panicked for sure. I would have definitely panicked. But so I just grabbed him and I put him on my chest and I rubbed and rubbed and rubbed. And he wasn't coming through. He was actually very limp. And so then I actually did give him some breaths on his mouth because I was getting a little nervous. It was more my husband's energy that was like, because he hasn't watched all the videos and he doesn't know that sometimes it takes some time. So he was kind of freaking out a little bit. So that's when I gave him a couple breaths just on his mouth. And then he came to and he turned a beautiful pink color and that was it. So
It's quite common for breech babies to be a bit more floppy and need a little bit more time and also stimulation and help. Obviously some don't, but some do, and more so than head down babies usually. And when you said it was blue or purple, whatever you want to say, and that means that it has been well perfused during labor, right? And during birth. When a baby comes out and it's white, and floppy and flat, then it's on the scale, right? It's better for it to be blue or purplish because it means that during, the labor, um, obviously it's been handling labor and birth, that birth process better, having had that perfusion. Um, so, but it is, breech babies tend to be a bit more floppy and needing a bit more, both potentially, a bit of breath, a bit of help, a bit of stimulation, more so than head down babies. And you did the right thing. The instinct is to kiss, to blow on the face, to blow in the mouth, to suck. That's just primal reaction, right? That you got like a mother. You were just like, okay, I'm gonna stimulate
Yeah.
the baby, right? Yeah.
And I didn't know like the best way to, and not, I don't want to use the word resuscitate because he didn't need resuscitating, but like I didn't know the proper way to do it, but I just like put my mouth over his mouth and just like gave a couple blows, and that was it. It wasn't like I don't want to make it sound like it was a panic. It wasn't a panic. It was all very like you said, just like mother instinct kind of thing. Like it wasn't oh my gosh, what do we do? It was just like pat, pat, rub, rub. It's not happening. Okay. Like let's blow. And
Yeah.
yeah.
It doesn't sound
So
like it took a long time though.
no, it felt like forever. So yeah, I would say once I got in the bath to when he was born, it was 2 hours. But and that's why normally I don't feel where they are. I just kind of trust where they are. But it was taking such a long time. And I was like, where is this? Where is this baby? And why is he not here yet?
Did you have like
Um,
pushing urges for 2 hours with him? You were pushing,
no.
no?
Just for the last. I mean, once I did have the pushing urges, he did come out fairly quickly.
Yeah.
I would say maybe like 10, less than 10. It's so hard to remember. These are good questions. um yeah, no, it was more like once I got in the bath, I thought he was going to come. I thought those surges were going to come more quickly, the pushing ones, and they didn't. It hung out for a lot
Yeah.
longer.
Well, that's the thing. It's just, breech babies do tend to be different in the way that they present in labor and birth, especially if you had the opposite first and you would expect it to be similar. Of course, every birth is different and some just change character for other reasons, but yeah, breech tend to be different because it's just a different, you don't have the big head applying on the cervix, opening it. You have a
Right.
bum or a foot
A
or
nice,
feet or like,
yeah, a nice
so
squishy bum.
yeah. Wowzers. So what a birth. And now we started kind of the opposite end of what we usually do because we usually start from the beginning of having, your first baby. So we'll tap into that as well. But um, you mentioned before how you had this feeling that you just knew something was not necessarily wrong, but you were feeling this fear rising a few weeks before the labor and birth started, and you couldn't really pinpoint what it was. And yes, we had a mentorship session about it. And um, do you want to share a bit deeper about what it was that you were anticipating or sensing or intuiting?
Yeah, it was it's just one of those things that I just wanted to share, that just to listen to your intuition and to not ignore things. Not that what I nothing would have really changed, because it's not like I would have gone to the doctors or anything like that. Nothing would have changed, but just that like feeling that, you know, something is a bit like it was stirring, like it wanted to stir strength in me kind of thing. Like all the other ones, I never had fear leading up to it. And this one, it was just like, I'm so scared. And it made me stop and just like take time and take more self-care and slow down. Before I was just like, I knew I needed to like really come down. I was all like, fear just makes you ungrounded, right? So I knew I was like, I just need to come down, like everything's okay. And like I just had mantras and affirmations. And I think just by listening to that feeling that something is different this time for sure, and just had I not been grounded and not done the inner work to release the fear, I think I could have been a lot more panicky in the situation once I found out that it was breech, and just being such a surprise. And yeah, so it's just that intuition is there to tell you, like so many women, you know, feel so unsure about having a home birth, and like, oh, I don't know, um, like not having a doctor or help present. It's just like it's so in you, and it's that those messages are there, and you just have to like tune into them and be confident in yourself. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you're sharing that because it's so accurate, isn't it? That um, what can really disturb the process of birth is fear and panic and
Mm-hmm.
essentially closing up, right? Or like resisting what's happening, or yeah, taking yourself out of your body, whereas you really need to be in your body and owning what you're going through.
Right.
And so it sounds like you somehow intuited that you needed all your strength and all your power and really collected yourself to birth this baby, which obviously helped. And whether, that is whether you're having a hospital birth, birth center birth, home birth with a midwife, or as you chose to have an unassisted birth, you know, that's with any birth and in any birth setting, truly that piece of wisdom you just shared.
Mm.
So I'm curious though, and I think everyone is. So obviously you started your journey birthing in the hospital. Did that end up being a natural birth in the hospital? And, I would love the comparison, each birth and how you progressed to this decision of having this totally unassisted birth with not a doula, not anyone present except your husband and kids. And also I want to know, did your kids see the fourth baba come out?
No, my
Oh.
girls stinkers. So they're 10 and 7, and my husband went up and got them, and it was sort of like old news. It's like they were like, oh, like it's fine. They came downstairs, they were like on the couch and stuff, but they could not have cared less. And my little boy, though, he's 4, and he was right in there and watching everything. He loved it.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was just like right in there as soon as he came out. He actually named the baby too, because we had a totally different name in mind. And then he was just like, he's like, is baby Jasper okay? And we were like, oh, that's the name.
Wow.
So we had something totally different, but yeah. So my girls didn't care, but
But that's quite remarkable too, obviously, that they have seen it before and it's so natural in your family that they're like, oh, it's another
yeah.
Monday or whatever. It's
Yeah.
just another day, mom having a baby.
My oldest, when I had my third at home, my oldest, she like put headphones on and like a sleep mask on, and she's like, I don't want to hear anything, I don't want to see anything. She was down, she was with us, but like she's like, I don't want to hear or see anything. Whereas my other daughter, she was younger obviously at the time, and she was right in there. So I don't know, it's that young innocence that wants, and like curiosity, and but once the older ones get older, they're like, meh. I don't want to see that.
Yeah. So let's go back to your hospital birth. Talk us through that. So I would love to hear about the hospital birth. So let's go back to that. How did you end up choosing to birth in the hospital the first time?
I had a midwife, and my mother-in-law, she had home births before, and she was super um, just like an advocate for them, loved it and wanted that. And just classic first birth, I was like, I want to do my first one in the hospital and then like see how it goes. um, but I still had a midwife and it went so smoothly. And I think that's why it geared me up for to have a home birth after I had a stretch and sweep and went into labor like the next day, was at the hospital by 9 a.m. and my midwife met me there. I didn't see any doctors or nurses, like everybody left me alone. I was progressing like really well. So um, I loved my midwife, but still, it's just interesting. Like, still not, I wasn't up walking around. They didn't tell me to like move or change positions. Like, it was sort of like I got in that bed when I got there and I didn't get out of the bed. And I didn't go on all fours. There's no squatting, anything. It was sort of just like from side to side, switching sides. Um, so I find that interesting because even though I had a midwife and everything, like she didn't tell me to
Right. And you had
move
done,
or,
and
and
you
I
had,
hadn't done, I hadn't, I had no, I had no education on it. I hadn't read any books or anything like that. So I was just listening to her. And um, even when you see it in movies and things like that, like people screaming and yelling when they have babies. And when the stronger contractions started, at one point, I let out like a big scream. And my midwife just like kind of grabbed my leg and she was like, "You don't need to do that." And I was like, "Oh." But it wasn't like a be quiet kind of thing. It was just like she knew that I was almost like putting it on. Like I felt like you were supposed to scream and yell. So that's what I was doing, you know? And she was just like gently was just like, "You don't need to do that." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then I didn't yell the rest of the time. But I do think back on that, and even though it was a very like gentle way asking me to stop, it could have been so much different instead of like telling me to like bring my voice down kind of thing. Like if you want to make sounds, like let's get low with the sounds and like more primal sounds. Like don't scream, but like
yeah.
so yeah, just very interesting how I don't know, how differently you're handled in a hospital setting.
Yeah. So
And even though,
you had a natural birth, but you were still on your back, kind of just from side to side, kind of
yeah,
how you treat an epidural woman, right? Who's kind of down to
yes,
the bed. Mm,
yeah, but it was natural. And it came quickly. I was there at 9 a.m. and by 3 o'clock, she
yeah.
was born. And I didn't have like insurance. So in Canada, you have to pay for a room if you want to stay in the hospital. And I didn't want to pay. So they were like, "Okay, well, you have to be out of here in 2 hours then." And
Whoa.
it was just like, "Oh, okay." And, you just had this baby and you're wearing your diaper and everything and packing up this 2 hour old baby into a car seat and taking her home. I was just in that moment, I was just like, I am not coming back to the hospital to have any more babies
Yeah.
because there was just no point.
I find that very curious that Canada is known for like, welfare, right? And similar to Sweden. And that's very surprising to me because
usually, you can do an early discharge, but that's usually, the earliest is 4 hours. Usually it's 6 hours
Really?
after birth. And so for you, it's only 2 in Canada if you don't want to pay for a room.
Yeah.
Whoa,
Yeah.
that's
So
quite
it was,
like
yeah, it,
it's barely like yours. That's
yeah.
crazy to me. Like, how do you have time to do everything after birth? Like, how do you have time to go to the toilet, have a shower, like make sure
Yeah.
that you're not bleeding too much, like all the things, right? That's crazy to me.
There was none of that. Yeah. It was like once I peed, then they were like, okay, you're good. You can go. And yeah. So yeah, after that I was like, I'm not coming back here. So then with my second birth, I uh knew I wanted to do it at home. I still went with the midwives. I had the same midwife I had for my first. And but I also had a second attendant as well that I met with a couple times, and she was a bit younger. And so I should mention that my first midwife, she was like almost retired age. Um, and so my second attendant, she was younger. And for her, uh, she was a lot more open to like she told me to like move around and things like that. And she was the very first one that told me like make the low sounds and stuff like that, like a bear growl kind of thing. And so yeah, so my second one I had at home, and that one was just beautiful. I absolutely, that's when I fell in love with birth right then. That was like, I was just like, oh my gosh, everyone should experience this. Like, instead of going to the hospital and everything, it was like I was bouncing on a ball. My daughter was watching cartoons. Like, we ordered pizza. And like, it was so nice. And, I was just in my living room. And when I felt that it was, getting close to time, actually, the midwife, she checked me and she said I was 7 centimeters. And like, do you want me to break your waters for you? So then for that one came along. Once she broke my water, it was about an hour. And then she was born. So a little bit of intervention still, like I was still getting the stretch and sweeps and still doing breaking the water and the cervical checks and um, yeah, but that's what sparked my like love for birth for sure, was having that
Yeah.
home birth. So that's when I started to like dig a little bit more and read and things like that. And that's when I started to come across like all the natural birth things. Like you don't
Right.
need the cervical checks and you don't need them. Once you start to read and get away from doctors and medical system, it's like, oh, I can see how I didn't need that. And I'm curious to know what would happen if I didn't get a stretch and sweep. Like maybe like my baby wasn't ready to come yet. And just thinking about like how much, even though they were easy births, it was like how much easier even they could have been had I not gotten all of these things.
Yeah, because it sounds like you had really kind of good two first experiences that, had you not had this straightforward births, maybe you wouldn't have had that, but you
Mm-hmm.
had, and so you were like, in a sense, you were sliding through the system on a banana peel, in a sense of like
Yeah.
quote unquote lucky, maybe potentially. I don't know. I mean, we don't know the full story. Maybe the midwife was keeping people out of your room. Who knows in the hospital? Or I mean, we don't know the background around things, right? But um, that's yeah, it's curious. I mean, from my end of having obviously worked within the system, I see you as lucky having had positive experiences in the
Mm-hmm.
hospital, because I know how hard it is to have that, right? And I love that you had that, and kind of without doing too much prep, it sounds like, but you had a midwife. Um,
Mm-hmm.
And so now we're up to your third, and the spark is there now. You've like ignited the spark for interest in birth. So before you become pregnant with your third, is this when you're starting to like do your research and like reading the books and stuff like that? Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like there wasn't too much on social media yet that I had really dug into, but it was just lots of books. Like that's when I read the Ina May Gaskin book, and there's another one, Birthing Without Fear. Oh yeah, I dove in. I have like a mini library right now. That's when I bought like all those books. And I did actually get a midwife um, in the beginning, and I had up until like my 20-week ultrasound, I had. And then we moved provinces, and so we moved to Nova Scotia, and there was no midwives out there. They were all in Halifax and like the city, and we were like far, far from the city, and there was no midwives at all. So, and I knew I didn't want to go to a hospital, and I knew I didn't want doctors. And so that's when I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to get a doula. There's got to be somebody around that's like been around some births. So that's when I found my doula. And that's why I had that birth that way, because it was like, had I been in Ontario, I probably still would have just had a home birth with a midwife again. But it was sort of just the getting out there in the middle of nowhere. We were on a farm and everything, and it was just like, this feels right.
So tell us about your third birth. I want to hear. Was it similar to your last two, or what happened? And yeah, how was it to have the doula?
The third one was my favorite. That one was the best one. Um, I had a doula that I had met her once before, and she was local. She lived fairly close, and we didn't really do any like work together. It was sort of just like, I've been at lots of births, and like I know, because my main concern was I felt very confident in birthing babies, but my concern was after, again, I had been told that I was in the first two births that I was low iron, and I had to take iron supplements so that I could even have a home birth. They said if my iron wasn't at a certain level, I would have to go to the hospital to have the baby. So I took iron supplements just so that I could have my second one at home. But this time I didn't want to take anything like that. So I really just wanted somebody there to like check the placenta, because I didn't know how to do that, just to make sure that it was all intact and everything, and someone to be there just in case I was hemorrhaging or something. That was like a fear that I feel like they put in my head with the first two births. Like that was a concern.
But a doula can't really do anything about hemorrhaging, can she? She won't have any medicine for you, for example, no drugs and
She just said she had like the shepherd's purse,
yeah, so
and so she
homeopathic.
was just, yeah, she was like, it's something to just like stop the bleeding, and then you have time to like get to a hospital,
Hmm.
even though the hospital was very far away. But it put that like one more, it was like I couldn't take the blankets right off yet, I had to like take a layer off. It was like, at first it was like, okay, I took away from the hospital setting, and then I took away from the midwife setting, but I still needed that like little bit of comfort of somebody else there that knew birth really well.
Yeah, which
So
is so natural and normal. I mean, women have always birthed with other women, right? So
mm,
it makes sense. And of course, yeah, um, to ha want to have someone there to support you through it makes sense.
mhm. And so, yeah, this labor started in the middle of the night and just started coming on like super easy. And like I just stayed in bed and I slept through them, but I knew that it was going to be that day. And woke up in the morning and like made something for dinner. And again, just like kind of puttering around. Um, it was around, you know, 2 o'clock and I went to go lay down for a nap. And the doula, she had been like checking on somebody else. She was driving by and she knocked on the door. And I came down and she was like, "Oh, I was just in the area and I thought I'd like pop in and see how you were doing." And I was like, "Oh, the contractions, they were getting close, but they've kind of teetered off. So I was just going to go have a nap." And she's like, "Oh, do you just mind if I stay for a little while?" And I was like, "Oh, sure, no problem." So then I didn't have a nap. I ended up coming down and just like having tea and talking. And um, I was holding the conversation really well. And then all of a sudden, they started to get a little bit stronger where I couldn't focus on our conversation anymore. And I had to go a little bit more inward. So then I went to the bathroom and then they just came on full on, and I came out onto all fours, and we were just like in the thick of it so quick like that. Like it was like the flick of a switch. And then my water broke and that baby came slip sliding out. It was like just shot right out. I think it took like 15 minutes. So it was amazing. And that was probably the closest to, definitely was the closest to like an ecstatic birth. I felt like no pain. It felt like when those surges came on, it was like it felt so good to push. It was and it wasn't even I was barely even pushing. It was like my body was pushing and it just felt so good. And so that was definitely my favorite. And that's what gave me the strength to do this one on my own, because I was just kind of like, "Oh, they just come sliding out now." Like it's so easy. And it's just so funny because it's sort of like as soon as you think you know everything and as soon as you think you have birth under your belt, like there you go. The fourth was just like, "Oh, you think you know how to do it, eh?"
Yeah,
You think it's easy.
it sounds like your fourth was almost your hardest in one sense.
Yeah.
Like it demanded most out of you. And you
Yes.
really chose to do it in a sense all by yourself. I mean, you had your husband there, obviously, but
Mm-hmm.
wow, what a journey. And in between, obviously, I mean, because you booked in for the Sacred Birth Worker mentorship before you were pregnant. And then when it
Mm-hmm.
started, you were like, oh, and by the way,
Yeah, and I was so excited to go through that whole journey being pregnant too. I was just like, this is so special.
yeah. And how interesting too, because I mean, you birthed, so you actually missed. Because you birthed before we went into the medicalized birth module where I speak about breech
Yes.
and where we
Yeah.
also we also go through a little bit about, how to not, I mean, the Sacred Birth Worker mentorship doesn't prepare you to kind of be a birth worker that has the skill to resuscitate, but we definitely cover things. And
Hmm.
but you missed that. You birthed.
I totally, yeah, because it comes out on like you release them on Sunday nights for me. I get the email Sunday nights, and Sunday night was when everything started. So I did not do any of that, and that would have been so helpful.
Yeah, maybe, but also you also handled it beautifully. And I don't know, maybe it was good that you hadn't seen that. I don't know. Like, who knows? I
That's
think you're
true.
divinely orchestrated anyways. You
Yes.
had all that you needed to birth this baby. You obviously had gone through the whole mentorship, except that, because that's in the end. We do have a month
Hmm.
of medicalized birth and birth advocacy. And, you know, I think you need to just have this deep trust in your ability to birth and into the birth process to have the best outcome. And I think because there's a few women who've gone through the mentorship when they are pregnant. Some have just birthed, some birth just after, and you and a few others have birthed in between. I think actually the best is probably to do that module after you've birthed. Just like I speak to my clients that just program your mind with all the positive, right? Like when you're pregnant, you're so sensitive, you're so open, so you're so vulnerable. That is not necessarily the time to dive on into all the things that can go wrong or medicalized shit,
Yeah.
right? It's more
Yeah.
like either before you're pregnant or after you've birthed.
Mhm.
Then you can do that. And so obviously you have that module now to go through after, you've come out, you're from your postpartum and all of that. But yeah, I think maybe life just knew exactly when you needed to
Yeah.
birth and kind of protected you from that. I mean, there's a lot of also women who are maidens who also see this mentorship as a way to prepare, actually, to have all that knowledge before you get pregnant. Because really, when you're pregnant, I really think that women should just focus on how to optimize their chances of having the birth they want. And that is not to focus on what they don't want, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's just all and that's why I love podcasts like this, because it's just, you need that positivity. And had I not had podcasts and Instagram pages filled with beautiful natural births, and there's been some videos of breech births that I've seen on there, and just women in their absolute power, I would have been it would have been a different story. I would have been much more panicky for sure.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, these curveballs you get.
What a story. What a journey. And what beautiful embodied wisdom you have now as you actually are about to step out as a sacred birth worker, offering your services to your
Yeah,
community, which is so exciting. Of course, you're still in the early postpartum bubble with your little one, so it'll take a bit longer, but in the next few months or maybe by the end of the year or next year, you'll start attending births potentially in your community.
definitely. I'm so excited to yeah, bring all this. It's like a culminating thing, right? So,
Yes. So much embodied wisdom, so much knowledge now, so much beauty, and you can really speak to the importance of doing fear release and listening to your intuition.
yes, exactly. Yeah. You definitely need that. And I just think too that like it's just so interesting that this is the birth that happened in, like the one birth where I don't have, the ultrasounds and the, like, it's just so funny that, and going through the whole mentorship too, like all the embodiment things that we did, and the digging deep and the fear release and things like that. Like it was like the perfect prep, like the absolute perfect prep. I did so much internal work beforehand, and yeah, it was just, I needed it. The universe knew that I needed it for this one, so
Yeah, I love that
perfect.
so much. I love how perfect that all panned out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you had a first time mama in front of you right now who's about to have her first baby and she really wants to have a natural and empowering birth experience, what advice and pearls of wisdoms would you give to her?
Oh, that's such a beautiful question. Um, my advice would be to just take it as a spiritual journey. It's not just the birth, it's the whole pregnancy leading up to it, and to just like dig deep and release those fears and listen to your wisdom and be free and flowing, and like really tap into that like feminine embodiment, because that's what you need to just surrender and release. You need to get back into that like softness and flowness, but still there's so much power in it. And yeah, to just do the work beforehand, because it's not just about being in birth. It's so much leading up to it, and so much, and the more work you do before, especially spiritually, it's not all just about like the breathing exercises and things like that. That stuff is so like on the surface level, like really digging deep into yourself. Because like I love that saying that like the maiden can't make it through birth.
Mm-mm.
Like, so you need to release that and step into that mother archetype before birth. Like find that power and that strength, because yeah, the maiden can't make it through. So I think that would be it.
I love that so much. And I've seen that so often, especially in the hospital, how that is so true. You need to tap into that extraordinary power that mothers hold, like to like claim your baby, birth your baby, claim your birth. And if you stay in the maiden can tap into the damsel in distress, right? That come save me, and the mother needs to be like the sovereign, the queen of her domain, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
my responsibility to do this. I'm not going to tap out and, stay in the maiden. I love that.
Yeah.
Mm. Thank you
Like this
so
like
much.
fire you have to walk through, right?
Yes, yes, it is. It's a holy fire. So thank you so much, Jessica, for coming and sharing your story. A bit different this time, starting with the latest one, but I loved it. It went
Yeah.
into that beautiful meshing of everything. And I think that everyone who has listened or watched this on our YouTube have received so much from the transmission of all your stories.
Yeah, it's been a journey for sure. I'm so excited that I got to talk about it, because I said I don't get to share it too often. So hopefully
Yeah.
it finds the right audience.
Yes, I'm sure it will. And as you are speaking now, there's this bumblebee who just came from my floorboards. So during springtime, there's these, like during a week or two, there's all these bumblebees, massive ones, born from underneath my floorboards. And they come out and they try to search for getting out through the windows. And I'm gonna
Oh
I'm gonna let it out. So whatever bumblebee medicine wanted to come through, here it is for all
no.
of you. I
Right?
guess, one of the pieces is that a bumblebee, I think, is heavier than logically it would be supposed to fly. Isn't that the bumblebee? And
Yes, it's like
so
impossibility.
yes, right. And so it came for you in your story. The bumblebee came that you did the impossible, which is obviously not impossible. It's truly as
Obviously
you
not.
tap into trusting the unfolding,
Hmm.
magic and miracles happen, and things we don't think we were possibly able to do, like probably, if you had asked yourself a few weeks ago, like, could you birth a breech baby on your own?
Yeah,
Maybe you wouldn't have thought that you could, but you did.
exactly. Right. Exactly. And I just think about, had I had a midwife and gone to the hospital, that would have been a C-section for
For
sure, because
sure.
they don't do breech births.
Right, right.
So
Yes.
crazy.
Crazy. It's just a variation of normal. And yes,
Hmm.
sometimes it does need some medical attention, but usually not.
Right.
Most of the time, not. Yeah. Overwhelmingly, most of the time, it's not.
And there's proof right there.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for coming and sharing your amazing birth stories with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anna, for having me on. That was so lovely.
Thank you for listening. If you love this podcast, then please consider sharing it, leave a review, or make a contribution on our Patreon page. And if you want to connect on social media, then find the podcast on Instagram as the Natural Birth Podcast. Thank you for listening.